Hey everybody, how's it going? Dr. Keller back here to talk with you guys about another health topic. Hope you're having a good day. So we've been talking a lot about weight and weight loss and diet and good things and bad things. And a lot of people out there and a lot of my patients, they will come in and they'll say, I know what I'm supposed to do. I know I need to lose weight. I know I need to, do all these things to get weight off so I can improve my health, but I'm hungry. I'm hungry all the time and I have to eat. And it's true, hunger is such a primal urge that it's very hard to override it. I mean, if you've ever tried to be on a restrictive diet, like eventually, unless you've got a lot of willpower, your body's gonna basically set the pace and it's gonna say, you gotta feed me. So I thought I'd take a little bit of time today to talk about what to do if you're hungry. If you're always hungry, if you're hungry from time to time, if your hunger is causing you to basically break on those goals that you need, the things you need to do to kind of improve your health. So I'm gonna go down a list of reasons why you might be hungry. And why don't you follow along with me, and perhaps some will resonate with you, and maybe you'll be able to solve some of the issues that you have with weight and diet. So the first one is what I like to call the sugar rush and the sugar crash. And we've talked a little bit about it in other videos, but basically it's about having a bunch of carbohydrate, what I like to call fast carbs, that enter the bloodstream very quickly and cause your insulin to surge up and then crash back down in this overcorrection. That upswing and crash will set up a pattern where you basically get really kind of satisfied and then go into a crash right after, and then you start a cycle of wanting to eat again. When I say fast carbs, what I mean is, if you think about fast carbs versus slow carbs, what I mean is the difference really in the amount of fiber that's in them. So if you think about fiber as this kind of molecule that's going to make foods chewy and crunchy, that exists to slow down your body's breakdown of carbs. So you could think about a fast carb as something like bread, chocolate, rice, potatoes, any of those things. You could think about a slow carb as, here's just a super traditional apple. So an apple has a lot of sugar in it, but it's you know it by eating it, the texture in it, how much you have to chew it. It's got a lot more fiber in it. And that fiber is what makes this a slow carb. Now, there's a whole spectrum of how fast or slow a carb is, and you can find it online. Basically, you can look at something's glycemic index. And glycemic index is basically kind of how fast a sugar is going to get into your body. If your diet consists of a lot of things that are fast carbs, a lot of rice, a lot of tortillas, white potatoes, or even some of the worst stuff, cakes, sweets, chocolates, sodas, then you're going to cause these insulin spikes that then are going to crash down and leave you wanting more sugar. So that's the first thing. Number two, ways to kind of avoid being hungry, or what to do to kind of prevent being hungry, are well-balanced meals. So unbalanced meals are basically having a lot of carbohydrate by itself. But if I were to, let's say I'm talking about potato. Here you ever got an example of a sweet potato? Now, sweet potato is a better potato option because of what I talked about before, the thing called the glycemic index. Relatively, carbs to fiber, this sweet potato is better than a white potato. This to me is like one of God's gifts to us, because I love sweet potatoes. I think they're more flavorful than a regular potato. You can do a lot with them. You can put olive oil on them and put them in the oven. You can cut them up and saute them. You can mash them. But a sweet potato has a lower glycemic index than a white potato. But that being said, if I have the sweet potato by itself, it's not as good for my body as when I have it with some other macronutrients. And macronutrients are like the broad categories of nutrients. They're predominantly carbohydrates, proteins, and those are things like my egg. We've got an egg here for us. Proteins, and then fats. And fats, got a nice little kind of display here. I don't know if you can see it, but fats, we've got healthy fats here. Olive oil, avocado, here's some nut butter. Those are fats, okay? So if I'm mixing carbohydrate heavy sweet potato with fats And proteins, I'm going to slow down the absorption of the sugar in this potato, and I'm going to be a lot better off with how my body processes the nutrients that I have. So, and another thing that can help slow that down is fiber. Now, a lot of people think of fiber as like whole grain stuff. You get the most fiber from vegetables. So, yeah, you can think about your brown rice and stuff like that. Quinoa, which is a nice grain, has a lot of protein in it as well, but the most fiber you get is from roughage, spinach, celery, all kinds of lettuces, even peppers, cucumbers, all that stuff. Fiber is a great break for our sugar rush. So if you think of carbs as, especially the fast carbs that I mentioned, skyrocketing in and going right into your bloodstream, you want to tap the brakes on the absorption of that sugar. You add fiber to it. Okay. So if we do that, I can have the same amount of sugar in that potato or in that piece of bread or that pasta, and get a kind of a slower curve of the sugar in my bloodstream than if I just had it without any of those other nutrients. Again, slowing down that sugar by the fats and the fiber and the proteins. So that was two ways to kind of help with our hunger issues here. Number 3, a lot of people get hungry because they skipped breakfast. And I know it sounds counterintuitive. A lot of people want to skip breakfast because they think it's going to help them reduce their weight, get less calories in their day. But oftentimes what happens is, you don't have breakfast and your metabolism kind of is sluggish, and you set off your whole body in kind of a bad rhythm for the day. And you might overeat come lunch or come dinner. And you've really done yourself a disservice because you haven't started it out right. I love breakfast that's rich in proteins. Again, I had that egg. I can show it to you again. It's a perfect breakfast. You can have, soft-boiled eggs. You can have scrambled eggs. You don't want to cook them too much, but the great thing about eggs is there are proteins in it and there are fats in it. And, don't worry so much, unless you have really high cholesterol and your doctor tells you not to, don't worry so much about the cholesterol in eggs, because the good thing about proteins and fats, and you get both in eggs, is they take a lot longer to digest in your stomach. So they're going to keep you satisfied for much longer throughout that morning. So that's a lot better than, your breads, your juice, if you're putting jams and stuff, or if you're having bagels. A lot of that, again, we're talking about fast carbs. They're going to go in fast. They're going to skyrocket your sugar, and then, and then you're going to feel kind of crashy afterwards. Okay, so we got 3 down. Number 4, it could be that you're dehydrated. And that's why you're hungry. Sometimes our brain gets a little off, and it can interpret signals of dehydration as hunger. So make sure that you're on top of your water. Your water level, they say 8 cups a day, but it really depends on your environment, how dry your city is, or your place, the altitude where you live, your activity, the temperature that day. But just really keep water on hand and keep hydrated. And when you feel like you're hungry, drink some water. Drink some water. You might find that your hunger subsides a little bit. And hey, you answered your question. What else? So number 5, Number 5, reason you could be hungry, alcohol. Now I gotta admit, I love a glass of wine. I love a little bit of whiskey. Alcohol, has some health benefits in red wine, for example, but it is a toxin. And alcohol has a lot of sugar in it. So if you're having alcohol, you might find that you're getting kind of really an alcohol sugar rush, and then going to have some of those issues with the fast carbs we talked about earlier. And then there's another thing about alcohol, which I'm sure you've experienced if you've ever had too much to drink and decided to do things that you wouldn't normally do and regretted it the next morning. I'm getting personal, I'm going to stop. If you have alcohol, it's a disinhibitor. And that's a fancy word for saying that basically it kind of allows you to do things you wouldn't normally do. And so when you've got alcohol in your brain, it can shut down some of the things that would normally prevent you from seeking out like the cake or the cookies or all that food that's at the end of the buffet after you've had a couple beers. So if you've got alcohol in your system, the chances are you have a higher tendency to eat when you don't need to, or eat foods that are just higher in sugar. So careful with that. Number 6, reasons you could be hungry. Sleep, or more likely the deprivation of sleep. Sleep is so important. It's so important that I'm going to devote an entire video to just sleep. But here, suffice it to say that the ramifications of not having enough sleep are really detrimental to your metabolism, and more importantly, to this topic, to kind of your appetite or your hunger. When you don't get enough sleep, a couple things happen, and they're hormonal things, they're actual things. Your cortisol goes up, because being sleep deprived is really like a stress. So if your cortisol goes up, it causes a lot of things to change in your body that increase insulin, that kind of drive like where sugars go. It makes you more susceptible to gaining weight. So that stress hormone cortisol from lack of sleep can really affect how you're metabolizing sugars. And then to other hormones that maybe you've never heard of before, leptin and ghrelin. And I'll just give you a little bit of, it's fascinating because these are hormones that are there. Leptin is there to kind of tell you when you've had enough to eat. And ghrelin is this hormone that's supposed to kind of stimulate your appetite. So what happens when you don't sleep enough is this ghrelin goes like through the roof, and all of a sudden you're craving, and the leptin plummets, so there's no signal to kind of shut down and be like, I'm done. I've had enough. So again, lack of sleep, all your hormones get messed up, and it's really, really difficult to override that appetite urge if your hormones are all out of whack. A lot of times when people come in and they're dealing with weight, I'm like, how are you sleeping? And if they're sleeping, not enough because they got kids, that are babies, or they're working a night shift, it's challenging, but I say we gotta find a way to get you more sleep. It's gonna be really hard to lose weight or to control your appetite if you're not getting proper sleep. All right, number 7, kind of in line with that, is stress. We talked about stress, cortisol again, but if you're stressed at work, if you're stressed because of family issues, financial issues, your cortisol will go up, and again, it can lead to issues with gaining weight, with overeating. So try to find, relaxing things to do to minimize stress. And you can meditate. I like to go on hikes. I like to get out in the water. I'm a surfer, so that feels really good to me. You're in nature. Music, you can listen to music. You can do yoga. There's so many things. Exercise is a great relief of stress. So try to incorporate those if you find that you're having issues with your appetite. Number 8, it could be you're hungry because your diet is too restrictive. So like if you feel like you have to cut everything out and take all the fun out of eating, then you could find that you rebel against it. Just psychologically, like I'm tired of not being able to have my chocolate, or not being able to have a chocolate chip cookie once in a while. Again, yeah, are those things the best for you? Not necessarily, but every once in a while, come on, it's going to be okay. If you find that you are rebelling against your diet, it's not going to serve you. So I like to tell people, look, give yourself a little bit of leeway, allow for a cheat day. You're going to feel kind of better about it in general, and maybe even frame it so that you don't think of a diet, as something restrictive. You just think of it as a new way of life and a new way of eating in a healthier way. And so that might be able to help. Number 9, reasons you might be hungry. Activity level. I mean, hey, if you're a freaking marathon runner, or you're lifting a lot of weights, or you're doing a lot of activity, you just might have a higher caloric demand. So if you're a fit person, or you're going through a lot of physical activity, just keep in mind that that physical activity burns calories. So you might actually need to add some more calories to your diet to kind of compensate for that activity level. Number 10, reasons you might be hungry. Mindless eating. So how many of you, do that thing where you turn on the television, you sit there with, a bag of popcorn, just start eating the popcorn, you're watching your show, and, maybe the show is like intense or stress. Maybe it's the Game of Thrones finale. Maybe it's, some other stressful show. You're really on edge, and you look down and you've eaten an entire bowl of popcorn that you really didn't need. And honestly, you weren't even really that hungry for. So keep in mind, ideally, when you're eating, you should be focusing on the food and on enjoying the food, savoring it, tasting the different flavors. There's a lot of sweetness in the sweet potato that we were talking about. There's, how about stuff like berries? I mean, berries are very, very enjoyable, and, I don't have them right now. If I'm just sitting, great, this is a lot better than popcorn, but if I'm sitting there doing something and just mindly popping berries, the whole day, I might eat a lot more than I really wanted. So, ooh, these are good. So just keep in mind, if you can focus on your meal and even enjoying it in company as well, and give yourself some time to really process what you're doing in that moment, chances are you'll have less food and you'll probably enjoy the experience a lot more. Okay, what else? Number 11. So reasons you might be hungry, and this might be a little bit more out of your control, but it begs bringing up meds. A lot of people are on medications, and there are classes of medications that lead to hunger. Specifically antidepressants, people who are taking SSRIs or other medications for depression, that can lead to weight gain and lead to increased hunger. Steroids, if you've got something like rheumatoid arthritis or another condition and you're taking steroids, yeah, it's kind of like the same thing with the cortisol that went up naturally. You're going to start craving food, and it's a little bit out of your control in that instance. Certain diabetic medications even can lead to weight gain and increased hunger. So if you find that you're on a medication or you've had a medication change and you feel like it's causing more hunger, bring it up with your doctor. Just say, hey, I'm feeling like I want to lose weight, or I'm eating all this junk now and I'm on this med. Is there an alternative, or what can I do to mitigate or kind of reduce the cravings I'm getting from this particular medication? So, and yeah, I talk about my meds with my patients all the time. So yeah, you're right, that's a side effect. What are we going to do? And if there's an alternative, we go for it. Number 12, reasons you might be hungry. Actual metabolic underlying conditions. So we've talked about a couple of them, like metabolic syndrome, where your insulin is going ragged and you're starting to gain weight and the scales literally are tipping in the direction of this bad disorder or disease for you. But there are other ones that aren't related to weight gain, like hyperthyroid, other metabolic hormones like Cushing's disease. So those could basically be something that you need to have evaluated, that a doctor needs to look at, and you need to strategize on how to handle. So anyway, those are 12 of the reasons that you might find that you're hungry, and if you can address those, you might be able to reduce your hunger. A couple just little tricks as well. If you feel like, okay, I know I'm hungry, my stomach's telling me I am, I've already had plenty to eat, like what else can I do now? Keep in mind, in the stomach, there are what we call mechanoreceptors, and they just basically kind of feel the stretching of your stomach. So adding water or adding something that's has a lot of volume to it, like kale or spinach or other lettuces, that can help expand in the stomach and make you feel less full. I mean, basically less hungry, I'm sorry. Just kind of expand in the stomach and say, okay, I've got something in their stomach, chill out, under control, okay, don't worry about it. And another thing is adding calories that are not foods that are so calorically dense. So if you're still hungry, don't reach for something like bread to fill you up the rest of the way. Reach for stuff that has a lot more fiber in it. That usually that's vegetables. You really can't overdo it on broccoli. I know it might not be the most enjoyable thing on your plate, but eating more broccoli, eating more celery, eating more fruit, especially fruit that has more fiber in it, that can help make you feel more full. And then you'll be on your way to keeping your appetite in check. So just to review, yes, you have to lose weight. Yes, you know what you're supposed to do, but gosh darn it, my stomach's like crawling out of me and begging for more food. Go through the list we talked about. It could be that you're eating too much processed sugars. It could be that you're eating alcohol. It could be that you're having, basically unbalanced meals. So think through all those things. Talk to your doctor if you're on a medication you think might be the issue, or you might have an underlying medical condition, and then piece all that together, and hopefully you'll be on your way to keeping one of your most primal instincts in check and keeping you healthy. All right, again, I'm Dr. Keller. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.